we were flying back to Copenhagen. Copenhagen is in Denmark. I was the only African guy, that was flying, in a multitude of, white people. And so they took my passport. Then they asked me to stay one side. Is the police? Oh, can I talk to you by this side? Asked me, the passport, I'm traveling with, is it mine? I was like, yeah, the passport is mine. Then he was like, where are you going to? Hello guys. Yeah, welcome back to another episode. As someone who has been traveling a lot, I've been traveling a lot for the past 11 years. The first time I actually, traveled on holiday was in 2014. That was when I went to Poznan. No, it was not Poznan. It was Warsaw in Poland. But, that is story for another day. Today, I'm not going to talk about Poznan. Instead, I'm going to talk about Dubai. How I was discriminated against in Dubai. Mind you, I'm not here to bash Dubai or anything. Dubai is really, really a place I actually love. Dubai is one of my favorite cities in the world. Trust me. I know, there are a lot of people that, sometimes they tell you, Dubai is really, really expensive. I want to go to Dubai. But sometimes, when I see the ticket, the flight ticket, it's really, really discouraging. This is what I'm going to tell people that want to go to Dubai, but they don't have sufficient fund to go to Dubai. This is what I'm going to tell you guys. If you want to go to Dubai, cheap, go to Dubai towards the beginning of September. It's really, really hot, but it's affordable then. It's like, probably like 32 degrees. A lot of people, especially, Europeans, might feel a little bit uncomfortable about the weather at that time. But, if you are someone that doesn't really care about, 32 degrees, I think, it's not a big deal. You can actually go to Dubai then, if you go to Dubai, the flight tickets are cheap. The hotels are cheap. When I go to Dubai, personally, that is when I normally go to Dubai. When I go there, I normally stay at Radisson Blu. I'm not trying to promote them. They didn't pay me for the shout out and all that. I normally sleep at Radisson Blu in Waterfront, downtown Waterfront. This hotel, costs probably like, €300-400 $300-400 per night. But when you go to Dubai, in September, you can actually, early September especially, you can actually get this hotel for $100. So that is why I actually encourage people to go to Dubai, during this period. But, okay, how was I discriminated in Dubai? One time, I went to Dubai, I went there on holiday. I was coming back and all that. You know how it is, when you are flying back. So we got to the airport. I was actually with a friend of mine, I was actually with my girlfriend, we were flying back to Copenhagen. Copenhagen is in Denmark. That's like, Danish capital. So we are flying back to Copenhagen. So I was the only African guy, that was flying, in a multitude of, white people and all that. So, and I was actually like, the only African, that kind of a thing, that has like, the European passport. So, we were passing through the through the security, the counter, this place that, you show them your passport before you board the plane, those girls that are there, checking the passport and all that. So they were like, checking, everyone else's passport, everyone was going. Then it got to my turn. When they got to my turn, then they were like, oh, can we see your passport? The normal routine. I showed them my passport. Then they looked at me. They looked at my passport. It was an European passport. So they took my passport. Then they asked me to stay one side. It was a little bit, unusual, you understand, because everyone was like, passing and all that. When they got to my turn, then they stopped me. So I felt a little bit uneasy about it. I was like, what is all this? But I kept calm, trying to that kind of a thing, you respecting, you are respecting them, you're allowing them to do their job and all that. So, I waited for 5-7 minutes. Then someone came, a security guy, I think he's the police. You understand, he's a security, I cannot confirm if it's police, if it is Dubai police, or probably if it is all the security people that works at the airport, but probably it's going to be a police officer, because he was not putting on uniform, he was putting on mufti. So he took me by the side, he was like, can I talk to you by the side? We left where we were boarding, the boarding queue and all that, excuse me. So he asked me, the passport, I'm traveling with, is it mine? I was like, yeah, the passport is mine. Then he was like, where are you going to? I'm like, I'm going to Sweden. Then he was like, but your ticket says, you are flying to Copenhagen. So I was like, yeah, I'm flying to Copenhagen, but because I live in the southern part of Sweden, most of the people that live in the southern part of Sweden, you understand, they use Copenhagen, they use the Danish Copenhagen airport, because it's closer to the southern part of the country. It's closer to the southern part of Sweden. So it makes more sense, if you live in the southern part of Sweden, for you to use Copenhagen airport instead of using Stockholm, which is in the northern part of the country. From Stockholm to the south is probably 5 hours. It doesn't make sense. Most people that live in the south, they don't use it. So then he was like, do you live in Sweden? I was like, yeah, I live in Sweden. Then he was like, do you work in Sweden? I was like, yeah, I work in Sweden. No, that was not even it. This was how it happened. So he asked me, where do you live? I was like, your boy is Södra del of landet, or your boy is Södra del of Sverige, which means I live in the southern part of Sweden. But I was not speaking English to him. You understand? I was speaking Swedish to him. So he was like, then he started speaking Swedish. He started speaking Swedish. Then he was like, Jobbar du I Sverige eller? Jag sa, jag jobbar I Sverige, which means, yeah, I work in Sweden. Then he was like, om vi ringer din chef, kan de bekräfta detta information? Which means, if we call your boss, can they confirm this information? I was like, visst alltså. Ja, jag har alltså chefens nummer. Du kan ringa henne alltså för att kunna bekräfta om jag jobbar hos henne eller inte. I was like, yeah, I have my boss number. You can actually call her to confirm if I work there or not. Then he was like, okay, det gör inget alltså, kan jag få numret? Then he was like, oh, there is no problem. Can I get the number? So I gave my boss number. I was trying to bring out my boss number to give to him. Then he was like, okay, you're in yet, you can go. Which means, oh, no, there is no problem. You can go. It was like really, really strange because, sometimes, when you are traveling as an African, with an European passport, you get to experience, some of this subtle discrimination, you understand, because of how you look. Sometimes they do not believe you. They believe that, you are actually traveling with someone else's identity, which, which I can actually find disrespectful, when you are passing through some of these airports. I don't know if there is anyone out there that has actually experienced this kind of, discrimination, while traveling. I would love to, I would love to hear your stories, Have you experienced this kind of, discrimination, someone questioning if the passport you are actually using to travel, if they actually belongs to you? I would like, I would like to, I would like to hear your stories as well. But, I find it really, really disrespectful, because, like, come on, this I consider as discrimination because, how can, everyone be boarding the flight, then it got to my turn, without no reason, you just took my passport and started like, interviewing me if the passport I'm actually traveling with, if it actually belongs to me. It's really, really, really disrespectful. It's really, really disrespectful. So if there is anyone that has actually experienced this kind of a thing, I would love to hear your stories. I would love to hear your stories. Let me know. Let me know. Okay, guys, I have to go now. Thank you very much. Bye.